It is event rundown time once again here at the Combot Collective. We're hopping across the pond. This time it's not just heavyweight action. We're talking about the largest 30-pound competition that happens in all of Europe every single year. Going on its third year, it is LABMAN FIGHTFEST. Great funding, great arena, great competitors, quite the field this time. We're talking all about it. Almost every competitor we're going to be doing a little bit of a rundown on. So stay tuned and catch up on what's been happening in the UK 30-pound scene.
Oh my God! Wow! This is the biggest flame we've ever seen.
Has preserved enough energy to get in the flip on Carbine. We're going to go all the way. Oh my God! That's going to hurt. Grab the milk, Jenny.
Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this breakdown episode here at the Combot Collective, bringing you everything you want to know from the world of robot combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from Battlebots to the live circuit. And I'm your host, as always, here, Sterling Brown, aka Sterling TXTG on Instagram, Quarry 300th on Reddit. And I have been quite excited to cover this event. When I started the Combot Collective, I had a handful of events that in my mind I wanted to cover when I had this channel going. Stuff like Norwalk Havoc, we've been there. Battlebots, we've been there. Bugglebots hasn't existed since we started it. Same with Robot Wars. And we also wanted to talk about LABMAN FIGHTFEST because some of the best 30-pounders in all of Europe come to this event every year. Last couple of years, I was a little uncertain on if I wanted to cover it because I've had people tell me that this is more of a company competition than a proper competition. But looking at the field this year, a field that we're going to be getting very in detail on, I think this is the time to finally start talking about LABMAN FIGHTFEST here on TCC. A lot of great robots in this field, as we'll talk about going on in this video, from the old heads like Explosion and Ironside, our championship level competitors like Nitro and Amnesia, and even some machines fans might recognize from Battlebots like Killi Pepper. We're going to be talking about all of these robots plus more. There were college machines and pro class machines at this event. Usually the event has both college and pro class in separate tournaments. This was a bit of a weird one. Very hard to follow bracket format, I will say. Watching this after the fact, there is like a merging of the two classes midway through the event. It's very bizarre. We'll talk more about it as we go on through the video here today. But yes, LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023 happened middle of July last month. Great competition. Great commentary, by the way, from the guy that runs Robots Live and the gentleman NJGW, and shouts to him. We both have the same all-time favorite robot fight in Free Shipping versus Duck versus Mecha Rampage. What a great fight that was, but I digress. We won't waste too much time here. We got a lot of robots to talk about. We're not going to be talking about every single robot. There's a couple of big names we're leaving out here, so I do apologize. Robots like Captain Jack Spinner, Bagest, Aloha, Perfect Spin, a lot of fun robots that won't be talked about in detail. Be sure to check out the live stream of this event because it is a fantastic event. It was a fun competition, plenty of great fights, and if you got a ADHD attention span like myself, there's a lot of very short fights in this event, so you can just hop into the next one, go to the next fight, go to the next fight. A lot of rumbles as well. But let's not waste too much time before we jump into talking about all of these robots here, starting with Ironside 2, an old favorite of mine. The Combot Collective, as always, is sponsored by RobotsRuinMyLife.com. Not in the UK, but they are the merchandise provider for numerous robot combat teams on the East Coast United States. You know, as we always mention, our Battlebots favorites such as Shredder Bro, Ripperoni, and Starchild. You can find merchandise for these robots on the RobotsRuinMyLife.com website. You can find their t-shirts, their poker chips, their stickers. You can buy the Ripperoni pizza box. It's fantastic. And if you want some more niche stuff, NRHL merchandise is also there. Merchandise from robots like Milk Tank, merchandise from teams like Omega Team and Team Shredder Bro. They have NRHL house merchandise you can only usually find at the arena itself, plus RobotsRuinMyLife.com lifestyle merchandise, stuff like tote bags, t-shirts, jackets, all with the RobotsRuinMyLife.com logo on it. It all looks absolutely fantastic. Be sure to check it out. It will have the link in the description below. As always, Robots Ruin My Life, proud sponsor of the Combot Collective. But now, let's jump into the Fight Fest, and as I mentioned, start talking about Ironside 2 here. Because recently on the Combot Collective, we really got into the weeds with this Robots team, Team Outlaw, and the impending return of Ironside 3 to the sports heavyweight class under its new guy, Spitfire. What we didn't realize is that this is the return of the Ironside family altogether, and this would apparently start right here with LABMAN FIGHTFEST and Ironside 2, the machine which inspired pretty much everything this robot family has been known for. The robot was not featured on the original roster announced for the event, so this was an absolutely pleasant surprise for me, seeing the returning team come a little bit earlier than I expected. Unfortunately, not the best showing for Ironside 2. Within 30 seconds of this whole event kicking off, they were in the first ever fight of LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023, and their weapon conked out within the first melee within like 30 seconds. Ironside spun up, got struck in the rear by our eventual champion Nitro, and that was it. The weapon didn't work for the entire competition. It was a 1-2 finish. Its only victory was over WTF Bot in a fight with huge shades to Disinformation and Perry from NRHL a couple months ago. No one really did anything, and the robot which died less somehow won. Nonetheless, very excited to see Ironside 2. Let's move on to some more successful robots here with Synthesis, who came to us from RC Robotics, a crew which has assembled a pair of utterly fantastic designs for this weekend of action. But the team, as of right now, is probably best known on TCC for their recent exploits with the newly acquired Capers, now named Leviathan at Extreme Robots. Henry Owen, who recently helped operate Zadkiel en route to its Spinners Championship victory at Extreme Robots, would captain this very unique machine, which had serious shades of Battlebots 2021's Retrograde. It made its debut at the 2022 Fight Fest and won Best Design. A lot to show for here in outing number 2, and it did okay. Showed off multiple configurations, both which were very solid, but ultimately finished middle of the pack. The undercutter wasn't working as well as they were hoping for, but it did do better than its sibling Haywire here, who was in the LABMAN student class, where you can usually expect a lot of odd, experimental, inexperienced designs and concepts. Then you have here the sibling robot to Synthesis, Sheffield Halliam's Haywire. And if this two-wheel drive hammer saw was in the pro class, honestly, nobody would bat an eye. It looks that good, but instead it lurks here in the student division, where last year it placed second in Fight Fest student class. And like I mentioned, unfortunately, it did do worse than Synthesis. It got absolutely destroyed in its first fight, forced out a lipo fire and all. And overall, the hammer saw just did not work during the event's remainder because of that big lipo impact. That being said, I will give credit to RC Robotics and both of their robots, Synthesis and Haywire here. Clearly not their best tournament run, but these bots did go 3-0 in the Exhibition 2-on-2 tournament. These two robots, despite not having either of their spinners working at this point, defeated the likes of Kitchen Grill, Combustion, Ravager, and Wilder One to take the honor of 2-on-2 champions home. A little bit of something. Moving forward here, let's talk about an Axe bot, Shogun. It was one of the few Axe bots at Fight Fest this year, a brand new one at that, and came in with quite a bit of momentum, having taken third at RoboDojo's most recent competition. The team has a racing background, and this brand new robot from the crew is slick and fast as a racing car, with inspiration to both robots, Beta and Shatter, in its design. The Axe has serious shades of the Mary Special we've seen Shatter adorn in the past, while the drive and wedge system definitely has vibes of robots such as Beta, and especially Terahertz, to be honest. Shogun put up some proper nail-biters in this event, some of the closest JDs of the competition against robots like Bargist and Amnesia, and also lucked out in the fact it did not face any spinners in this event for an extended time, going all the way to its very final fight against eventual champion Nitro, who did manage to knock out Shogun, the only robot to knock out Shogun in this event. Moving forward though, let's go to the nation of Scotland, and you cannot have a robot fighting event without a solid Tomb clone, and that is exactly what Slice of Life brought to the table. This Scottish beast came from Team Triforce, a team we're going to be talking a lot more about in our upcoming Extreme Robots video. And while Triforce is a heavyweight, Slice of Life still does carry the same colors and theming as its bigger, older brother. Slice of Life entered this competition with not only the biggest weapon, but the biggest weapon and motor in the field as well. And past results at Robo Dojo have made this a very fearful robot to fight in the field. And it proved its worth, that's for sure. It absolutely ripped apart Bread Dead Redemption and Soundwave in its opening fight and kept that momentum through pretty much the entire event, only losing one controversial judge's decision in its entire run. It also performed in the event-ending Gladiator Rumble, where it really turned some heads, including my own and TCC co-host Captain Mantine's. We already gushed all about Slice of Life in our Robot Combat Tonight video. Be sure to check it out. But here's a big name here, one that a few fans should be able to recognize. From the team which helped start this whole event, Team Immersion comes here with the destructive Irish force of Kitchen Grill. This European robot was inspired by one of China's greatest heavyweights of all time, and it already this year has qualified for America's top event with the NRHL finals in its sights in November. A lot of international flair from Asia to America, all the way back to the UK here with Kitchen Grill. So the hype for this robot has been real. Numerous fans of Robot Combat had this robot going on to win it all at LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023, and with good reason. But holy cow, what an awful event for Kitchen Grill. Not a follow-up on NRHL at all. New look, but awful results. Kitchen Grill went completely winless during this event with countless electrical issues. It felt like either the robot was dying halfway through a fight or the weapon just didn't work at all. Fairly common issue with robots at this competition, I will say, sadly. But let's move on to its 2-on-2 partner, Fortitude. This is an odd one, but oddly enough, one of my favorites that competes at LABMAN FIGHTFEST every single year. ACCU is a building company based in Europe and have been the main sponsor for LABMAN FIGHTFEST going on a couple of years now. And one thing big companies that sponsor events really don't do nowadays is enter the said event with a robot of their own. You know, sadly, we don't see Exometry themselves making robots for NRHL or Battlebots, but ACCU does have a fighting machine which competes exclusively at FightFest in Fortitude, now called Fortitude, with what looked to be an extended hook axe. This robot has a very old school Battlebots look to it, and for pretty much solely that reason, I am an absolute sucker for Fortitude. That being said, this was not the version the team actually originally intended to show up with. They really wanted to come with a chambered wheel front hinge flipper. I guess they didn't finish it in time. I'm not sure what happened there. Fortitude, looking a lot like Fortitude here, was mainly there just to promote ACCU and get annihilated, and it certainly did a lot of both in multiple fights during the main competition and the 2-on-2 competition with Kitchen Grill. This robot had its top ripped off numerous occasions. It was pretty brutal. But now we got a friend of ours here at the Combot Collective, a longtime supporter and someone who has always helped us with info, in Mr. BK and his longtime crew of Team ULL. We've seen Mr. BK win Beetleweight Championships and compete at Extreme Robots this year, but we haven't followed what he's really been doing much in the 30-pound class until now. Much like the more popular Captain Jack Spinner, his entry in this competition, WTF Bot is very much huge inspired, but with more shades to machines like Zadkiel and Bobby than the Gabriels and Wumbos of this sport's past. In WTF Bot's only prior outing, the wheels struggled to stay on, so we hope for much better here, but it was kind of a shame how their run went along. Just like robots we've already discussed, issues were aplenty for the huge style bot. Either the weapon wasn't working or the drive wasn't working in every single fight. The robot barely left its corner square. Hate to say it. This had to have been frustrating for the team, but, you know, a great showing nonetheless. You bring a robot to this competition and you hold your own, you get my credit. That's for damn sure. But now let's talk about Theseus. This was my pick to win the entire school competition, as much like Enforcer, another robot in this field, it was a robot with a school background but pro experience here, this two-wheel drive vertical spinning bot. Theseus entered FightFest representing the University of Leeds, but really comes from the mind of Team Toon, the team led by Alex Brown, which is best known for the Toon Raider family of robots, a heavyweight lineage which has reached the Robot Wars grand finals in the past. But unlike TR2, TR3, and TR4, this isn't a flipper. This was a chance for Team Toon to lay in some proper damage for once in their careers. And it really did look to be the university favorite until, like I mentioned, those two brackets merged. as in the round of 12, Theseus had quite a tough draw, having to challenge our defending champion Amnesia, and sadly for our vertical spinning friend, things would just not be so pretty here. A shocking early out for Theseus, and all things considered, it would not win the student class, but it did partake in a ton of rumbles after the main event, really made its presence known, and did a lot of damage. But now let's jump over to our top 6 robots at LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023. We have our top 5 pro robots, but first, we talk about the robot which finished 6th overall, our college champion, Dullahan. Dullahan is an Axbot from the University of Strathclyde, and I guess it's really one of the true poster bots of this event, given how much we saw this machine in promotional material for this competition. Dullahan is an Axbot, though one not nearly at the same power as the pro-class robot Shogun. Their captain, Dominic Cartilage, has been competing for 4 years now, but has yet to place higher than 4th with any of his machines, regardless of class. And as we start going into fights in detail here, honestly, in this first fight, Dullahan had already pushed past my own expectations. Its axe did not have much power, shades of Deadblow to be honest, but in its first fight it helps knock out Enforcer, then quickly turn it around by slamming its other opponent's Sentience into the wall later on in the melee, flipping Sentience over and forcing a double knockout, quite the upset early on in the tournament. Later on, a well-rested Dullahan next challenged a very unique Ravager, another favorite of mine, very ominous style design there, and despite a few sturdy strikes, early on, Dullahan would dominate again. Ravager would get bullied into one corner where it lost numerous pieces of its wheel armor, and once his weapon was dead, Dullahan would pit the Omni-driven robot for yet another KO, back-to-back. And then in fight number 3, Dullahan took a step up to some proper challenge here. It was now onto the pro-level robots where it faced the 2-0 Captain Jack Spinner. And even though Dullahan did have that anti-spinner plow, it really did struggle against Captain Jack without many weapon blows of its own. But hey, luck is sometimes all you need in robot combat. One lucky slam into the corner forced Captain Jack Spinner out of the arena for just a second. And in this event, you know, if you bounce back into the out of the arena zone, unlike extreme robots, it does not count. You are still eliminated, which meant for a favorite of the competition, to be completely honest, and Captain Jack Spinner, this robot was out. Another shocking elimination and another shocking victory for Dullahan, who now found its way into the final 6, and perhaps more impressively, found itself as the last standing college-built machine in the field, making it our college robot champion. Huge shout-outs to them. And despite its weapon not making the trip to this fight, unfortunately, Dullahan entered the round of 6 versus Telekinesis, completely weaponless. But man, this robot never gave in. What a fight this was. Dullahan rammed Telekinesis nonstop and even managed to control large portions of this battle. There were a few pinning attempts made, but the battle would go the distance here, with Dullahan limping to the finish with no wedge left and half of its drive still working. It was a fantastic effort by Dullahan, but the pro-class robot would advance here, giving Dullahan 6th overall. Let's get old school here, though, with our 5th placing robots, sitting up there with Ironside 2 as the true boomers and gatekeepers of the featherweight division. We have Explosion. Now, if you know anything about the world of UK robot combat, you know about Team Invade and their ability to perform at any competition. Everyone knows about Eruption's countless heavyweight titles, its TCC number 2 ranking last year, and it's what its sibling machines can do. But all story starts somewhere, and the start here was with the OG flipper Explosion, who debuted 15 years ago in 2008. The trophy case for this machine dwarfs every single other robot in this competition, even Amnesia's, and on top of it all, this robot is still relevant. Explosion placed 3rd at last year's LABMAN FIGHTFEST, but Michael Oates wanted it all this time around. And already in one fight, we'd see Explosion not miss out on one flip, and that's because it didn't get the chance to flip. Tough draw with defending champion Amnesia here in round 1, as after jockeying for position, Amnesia would throw it out of the arena with the greatest of ease, and much like Captain Jack Spinner, Eruption would escape from the out of the arena zone, but KO still stands here. Moving forward, Eruption would take on Bread Dead Redemption in the losers rounds, but due to the damages taken from Slice of Life, Bread Dead would have to bow out and forfeit, but Michael Oates still wanted to have a fight. And this meant a battle with 250-pound rival Will Thomas, as Soundwave was already out, but they wanted at least one more fight under their belt before calling it an event. So a battle versus Explosion, with Explosion advancing regardless, was decided upon. Sadly, still no flipper power here for Soundwave, leaving it just a target for Explosion, who ended the 3 minutes with 12 flips and 14 attempts. Explosion was moving on anyway, but this was a good warm-up to get it ready for more action in the losers round with a battle against Nitro, our soon-to-be champion. Michael confessed before the fight he believed he had a 5% chance to win this battle, and sadly that guess was correct. A majority of the fight was jockeying for position, but once Nitro got Explosion into a corner, half the drive would be taken out, but the robot did exit the KO looking the same, which was a big enough of a win for Michael Oates according to him. And like I mentioned, a very confusing tournament format at LABMAN FIGHTFEST. I thought Eruption was permanently gone after this loss to Nitro, but apparently not. Explosion then partook in a 3-way melee featuring it, Ironside 2, and Synthesis, and it made it out and advanced onward where apparently it does have another fight. It went on to take on Slice of Life in another redemption round, as it was England versus Scotland, OG Flipper versus brand new horizontal spinner. Explosion looking a little bit different here though. It had an anti-horizontal spinner plow which it borrowed from Team Shock, and it worked great here to be honest. It busted Slice of Life's weapon in under a minute, as both robots were down their primary weapon very early, making this a very suspenseful pushing and shoving match, with both machines almost going into the arena drum and arena pit on different occasions. This one was another battle that went to the judges, and it was another split decision, but one which would be in the controlling bot's favor. Eruption moved on after another near elimination. Eruption in the quarterfinals then challenged Killi Pepper, and after avoiding significant damage all event, luck would run out here for Explosion. Both machines got one solid hit in the opening 30 seconds, but then Eruption pulled probably the largest flip of the event. You gotta check this one out. It was a massive cross-arena yeet, which almost corner-pocketed Killi Pepper out of the arena. Killi, though, just managed to stay in and then proceeded to dish out some serious bounce-back damage to Explosion, enough to nearly rip Explosion's flipper almost clean out of the robot in what was a brutal KO, eliminating Explosion, moving it forward. But let's move forward here to our fourth placing robot, Telekinesis, another deadly horizontal spinner from Scotland. This green slicing machine led by Rachel Gribson is a true veteran of the weight class, having been built back in 2017 with all sorts of appearances at events such as Robo Jojo, Robo Challenge, King of Bots, and even prior LABMAN FIGHTFESTs. It has won multiple Most Destructive awards and even partially inspired one of 2 heavyweights we saw during KSI's Sidemen collab with Extreme Robots. And geez, what a wild start for Telekinesis here. Its first melee was a true Wild West showdown versus powerhouses Kitchen Grill and Killi Pepper, and Telekinesis did not want to make the first move, leading Kitchen Grill and Killi Pepper to essentially knock one another out in one hit, while Telekinesis would pick up the scraps and pick up a double knockout victory in just under a minute. And after a massive double knockout victory over huge names, perhaps the only greater challenge for Telekinesis would be challenging one of its own teammates in Synthesis here. Like we mentioned, Synthesis did bring out a slick anti-horizontal spinner setup, one we've seen in the past. But one well-placed shot by Telekinesis behind Synthesis's wheel guard would be enough to dislodge Synthesis's left wheel and locked up the drive for a short but cannibalistic KO for RC Robotics. As then in Fight 3, Telekinesis then fought a student class robot in Sentience. Like I already mentioned, this bracket from round 4 onward just started to make absolutely no sense. I was piecing this all together as I went along. But talking about the fight, Telekinesis was on the ropes at first, but this vicious horizontal spinner would hold on much better than the student project. Big time destruction and a late hit by the horizontal spinner would give Telekinesis another knockout win. Moving it onward to Fight 4, entering the final 6. As we already talked about this fight a little bit, Telekinesis now challenged another student-built robot in Dullahan. It was an axe spot entering with no axe, and I've already went over this fight. Like many of the close battles in this weekend, this was a great one. Dolan had its near moments of victory, but it would be a judge's nod to Telekinesis, who endured a very Blacksmith versus Minotaur-esque victory to reach our semifinals. In the semifinal, Telekinesis challenged Nitro, our redemption robot, which got to skip the redemption rounds by good fortune. Telekinesis had been good against vertical spinning robots all events, but the pure drum on Nitro was just too much for the red hot horizontal to take on here. 3 massive strikes sent Telekinesis all over the arena, as this one ended with Telekinesis down a wheel and out in the semifinals, losing to our 3rd place robot Amnesia in the 3rd place playoff. And honestly, you cannot talk about excellence in the featherweight class without bringing up one Amnesia. Our recent Amidst the Havoc NRHL streams, I have brought up the idea of Amnesia being the next international star to make it big in the House of Havoc, and the track record is there given what we've seen it do in the past. This machine won the 2018 FRA 30-pound championships, then took the King of Bots UK 30-pound title later that year, a victory which would invite it to China, where it would defeat the league's top featherweight by knockout. On top of all that, Amnesia held 3 Robodojo Sportsman titles and entered this competition our reigning and defending LABMAN FIGHTFEST champion. Outside of robots such as Kitchen Grill and Explosion, it was hard to say there was a more expected winner than one Amnesia. And we already talked about this first fight a little bit. Amnesia started doing Amnesia things essentially right out the gate. It drew a massive challenge interruption for round 1, but only took about 30 seconds to get it out of the arena. It then delivered a similar fate to newcomer WTF Bot for a double knockout in under 1 minute. And then in its first post-melee battle, it would face the impressive 1-in-1 Axbot Shogun. This fight on paper seemed like it would be pretty easy for Amnesia, who fairly easily outwedged Shogun, but numerous axe shots and a near pitting made this a split judge decision, but one where the champ would survive, enduring 18 axe strikes to take the victory here and move on to round 3, where Amnesia then took on a top college machine in Theseus in a battle between squads with heavyweight level acclaim. Very much a Wild West showdown early on here, with both robots looking for control, not wanting to make a single mistake. But Amnesia ultimately would only eat 1 hard strike from Theseus before dishing out a few vicious flips of its own, one almost sending Theseus out of the arena, which would kill its weapon in Shremek, allowing Amnesia to take a knockout win here. In the round of 6, Amnesia would have to challenge Nitro, a robot very similar to Iron Scrap, the Chinese drum bot it defeated in 2019, and sadly this one wasn't as decisive. Nitro dominated the opening 2 minutes with countless hits, but Amnesia's late battle rally would be huge, almost sending Nitro out of the arena on 2 occasions, with it being held upside down for a large duration of that window. Amnesia had some very late drive issues though, which forced the fight to another split judgment decision. Shockingly for Amnesia, not really a decision I agree with, but we'll get onto that fight a little bit later on. As the champ was on to the semifinals, and honestly not much here to discuss here shockingly, it challenged Killi Pepper in a must-see semifinal, but I guess the good luck of that last split decision would pay back here. Driving issues for both of these worn-down robots, both weapons seemingly dying around the same time, but Amnesia's lifter would get lodged into the floor. Horrible luck here. The weapon jammed stuck, and the defending champion was high-centered, allowing Killi Pepper to limp into the final with ease, as at the very least, Amnesia avoided another Nitro rematch, avoided a lot of damage. As it was all said and done, Amnesia did leave the tournament with the 3rd place title after defeating another sturdy spinner in Telekinesis during the 3rd place playoff. It ate the strikes and managed to pit the undercutter in relatively quick fashion. So our champs still managed to stay on the podium. Shoutouts to them. I really do hope we can see Amnesia in NRHL in the future. I mean, Kitchen Grill's over there. Let's get more UK bots. But now let's talk about that robot which beat Amnesia in Killi Pepper. I would not be surprised if this was inadvertently the most recognizable robot in this entire video. As you can tell, Killi Pepper's beautiful but still traditional design means that this is a 2-wheel drive vert built by Team Wranglebox and powerhouse roboteer Ellis Ware. And while this robot does have quite a massive reputation in the UK, being a King of Bots Gladiator champion and even our defending runner-up here at LABMAN FIGHTFEST, Killi Pepper's biggest claim to fame had to be its recent appearance at Battlebots as a mini-bot for Big Dill. A lot of you may remember Killi Pepper doing some proper damage to one free shipping in what would be Big Dill's only win of the competition, and Ellis would hope for even bigger damage here. It's robots of the same size. But to start off, this was an odd one and a tough one for Killi Pepper. Stacked opponents with Kitchen Grill and Telekinesis to start it off, and Killi Pepper could not even get out of its corner. One big box rush hit by Kitchen Grill took its wheel off, as then Telekinesis then knocked it out of the arena shortly after. So after the unfortunate results of Killi Pepper's collision with Kitchen Grill, you knew Ellis was ready for a proper fight versus the weaponless Fortitude. And while Killi Pepper did win this fight by KO with the greatest of ease, we still saw some drive issues which were caused in Fight 1 still lingering, and these drive issues would be a story for Killi Pepper in this entire competition. Killi Pepper next faced a robot very similar in design but very different in weapon and Barghest. It was two fan favorites colliding in what was a great showing by both robots here. KP showed much better durability during Barghest's suplexes and dished out the biggest hits it had all event up to that point, as the dog would eventually be ghosted, and Killi Pepper would win this one via the knockout. In next fight, Elsewhere then challenged a familiar foe in the top-ranked student class bot Enforcer, as Enforcer tried to be hot on pursuit with a box rush, but Killi Pepper was ready and loaded with a hard strike which stunned Enforcer, and 3 more strategic surgical strikes later, and Enforcer was sent out of the arena yet again, its second time in the event, another KO which forced Killi Pepper into the final 6. And in the quarterfinals, this mini-bot would next challenge a mini version of a 250-pounder in Explosion. Two popular names here, maybe the best robot in their respective weapon class of this event, and this was a solid fight. Like I already mentioned, one massive flip by Eruption, and then it was all Killi Pepper from then forward. Huge gashes and buckles in and out of all the sides of Eruption, with the flipper and drive busted worse than had been all event. The flipper was busted beyond repair, and it would be a knockout in just over half a fight. As now, onto the semifinals. From one elite Brit wedge, Killi Pepper then gets another with Amnesia. We just mentioned this fight. We expected this to be a banger, but Killi Pepper would get lucky here after dealing with some small radio issues in all of its past fights. The weapon on Killi did get busted early, but like I mentioned, it did not matter. Amnesia would effectively knock itself out during this battle, leaving our fan favorite to pull off an upset of sorts, moving it forwards to the final. Let's talk about that final opponent, though, before we get over to our last battle of the competition. Recently, this year at Norwalk Havoc in the 12-pound hobbyweight division, we saw Team AR Design show up and show out with a pair of two-wheel drive drum bots under the name of Octane and Syntex. And if you don't remember that, perhaps you'll remember their Robot Wars veteran, the 250-pound machine Hobgoblin. Now we're talking about Nitro, the team's newest robot, which takes a lot more from their 12-pound brothers than it does its 250-pound one, with the design being a direct upward scaling of Octane. If the power of Nitro stood to be the same as robots such as Octane in the past, it would be a proper candidate for most destructive, and I think that ended up being the case here. It first squared up to Ironside 2 and eliminated it with a pair of vicious strikes, and then did the exact same in 3 strikes to Synthesis, stranding it on a wall for a double KO in just over a minute, as this was honestly just a bit of a warm-up for the new robot Nitro. And then it was another big challenge for fight number 2, as Nitro then had to challenge last year's bronze medal robot Eruption, but Nitro was a favorite coming in here, and it certainly delivered despite it not being as quick or destructive as a showing as last round. It was still enough for the legend to take the victory here via knockout. And then, in round 4, unlike other pro robots, we'd see Nitro challenge another non-college robot in this round, and the once thought to be eliminated Shogun. Two designs, beautiful in their own way here, but one looking like a car wreck, and that one wasn't Nitro. 3 massive strikes from the brutal drumbot would do Shogun in, as Shogun ended up high-centered on its own broken wedge part. That's always a demoralizing way to go out. And then in the top 6, it faced Amnesia, and this was a fantastic back-and-forth battle, but one which personally to me felt like it was won by Nitro after the very impressive opening 2 minutes it had. Amnesia clawed back, though, with some great slams and a couple of near out of the arenas in that final minute, enough to woo the judges over. I still don't agree with this decision. I brought it up on Robot Combat tonight. Really crappy call, but I don't know. The real sad thing here was Team Captain Andy getting carried around like a baby by Adam from Team Immersion. That was kind of tough. But I digress. Moving forward here. Like I mentioned, Team Captain Andy was very visibly and vocally frustrated about the judge's decision, but thanks to Dullahan and Explosion's damages, regardless, it would advance to the semifinals anyway to face the undefeated Telekinesis. Rachel's driving had been impressive, but Nitro's frustration pushed it through here in dominant fashion. Strike 1 would shoot Telekinesis like a bullet. Strike 2 would rip a wheel off, and Strike 3 would kill the weapon and leave Telekinesis dead for a knockout defeat. Nitro had bounced back and was now in our finals, where it fortunately did not have to rematch Amnesia. So here we go. Finals time. 26 challengers entered this event, 9 of which coming from elite English colleges, but we were down to only the pros here for our final 2. A pair of elite two-wheel drive vertical spinners coming from teams that have recently made a name for themselves across the pond in the United States. Of course, we've already talked about their stories, with Killi Pepper having that breakout appearance versus free shipping, while Nitro's older sibling, Octane, performed at NRHL. Speaking of, I do wonder what happened to that 12-pound event originally announced, but that all is now background behind us. We've seen both of these robots in this event. They've ripped apart opponents like few have, and even had some serious gremlins late into the event, with Killi Pepper's constant receiver issues and Nitro's controversial judge's decision. Both these robots had stepped into the arena with our defending champion Amnesia and came out the better. Now the only thing left for captains Andy and Ellis was to see which wicked two-wheel drive vert would be the better. Nitro entered this fight looking like its standard self, but Killi Pepper would be a little more worse for wear. The Wranglebox bot had some orange protective armor up front and unfortunately some tape on the underside. Very essential tape which held the link together so the robot could operate. And now, with such a sensitive spot on the robot like that, you think Ellis Ware would play it safe, but you'd be wrong. Both robots went pedal to the metal in this electric finale. Each collision was weapon to weapon, and shockingly enough, after a handful of massive exchanges, Nitro's weapon would stop for the first time all event, but the drum butt was not on the ropes for long, as the still frantic Killi Pepper ended up doing itself in. The final strike of this one was a bit of an odd one. Another weapon-to-weapon impact on Nitro's dead drum, which threw Killi Pepper backwards, rocking the pepper and knocking the tape loose, which shut Killi Pepper down. It was even to the very end, but survivability and durability is always key in these competitions, and Nitro ended up coming out on top. A fantastic victory for what has been a fantastic year for Team AR Design. Big shout out to our LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023 champion Nitro, our runner-up Killi Pepper, our third place, the former defending champion Amnesia, our fourth place Robot Telekinesis, our fifth place Robot Explosion. I don't know how many times I've called him Eruption in this video, probably at least 3 times. But I also want to give shout outs to Dolan, our college champion, and even to Haywire and Synthesis, our 2-on-2 champions. This was a fantastic event. All the robots showed up. There was all sorts of weapon variety. We had successful axe bots. We had successful flippers. We had huge style robots, horizontal spinners, vertical spinners, some very fun old school designs like 422, like Aloha, like Perfect Spin. The college robots always provide something fun, something conceptual. Just look at Synthesis. Look at Ravager. I didn't talk about Ravager enough in this video, to be honest. This was a great showing by all these machines. So shouts to everyone. But Nitro, our LABMAN FIGHTFEST champion. Let's go ahead and wrap it up here at the Combot Collective before this video gets too long. I'm your host, as always, Sterling Brown, aka Sterling TXTG on Instagram. You can find the Combot Collective in multiple places if you enjoyed this video. Starting off, of course, with our Facebook and Instagram, as always. Plenty of news, plenty of updates, plenty of stats, plenty of posts go on there in the month. Be sure to follow them in the link below. We also have our Discord server. Numerous robot combat builders, such as Will Thomas from Team Shocker, in the server. We also have numerous robot combat content creators, numerous robot combat fans. They're all in the server, hanging out, having a good time. We're trying to make it more active, so please join the server. And if you like the video, hey, pop in here, like the video itself, leave a comment giving us your thoughts on LABMAN FIGHTFEST 2023. Give us a little bit of constructive criticism as well. We want to make TCC better every day, and if you really want to make TCC better, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon so you can get every single TCC update. We're trying to be a little bit more rapid fire with our uploads. I know there was a bit of a lull from June to July. We want to pick it up here. We hope you're here for all of it. But for now, let's wrap it up. We will see you next time here at TCC for more breakdowns, more robot combat tonight, and more news.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.